I noticed in your key profit drivers you left out inventory and accounts receivable. Aren't those critical?
Of course they are, but I'm going to get on my soapbox for a couple seconds and preach. I'll try not to scream, but calm me down if I get hysterical here. We tend to overstate the importance of inventory and accounts receivable. And one of the mantras that I think is really killing distribution, I think it's a terrible concept, is the concept that cash is king. Now, I know that everybody else in the world is out there saying cash is king, and all I'm saying is, hey, everybody else is wrong. I don't think cash is a king. I think it's a rebellious prince that ought to be put into exile. Now, clearly, I want to have cash, but here's my problem. Most people try to drive more cash by systematically lowering their inventory and accounts receivable. Now, they did that in part because the economy was terrible, which I understand, and part of the idea was we need to have cash, and in a down sales market, I got to lower the inventory and accounts receivable. I can't, argue with that. But my question is, why do we need cash? Cash to do what? Usually most people tell me, well, I need cash so I can invest in inventory and accounts receivable. And my argument is, why'd you cut it to begin with? So my concern is, as we've gone through this process, we've kind of reduced our inventory and accounts receivable to the point where we can't make a profit. Now, I know this sounds a little bit complicated, so let me give you an example, if I could, please. We worked with a major distribution association, okay, and they conducted an incredibly expensive research project. I mean, really expensive. And it was done a few years back to say, let's identify the services that we're not providing as an industry that our customers want. So what services could distributors provide to their customers so that we could have a higher service component, make a lot more money? It sounds great to me. Now, what happened, though, the answer that came back from customers was, we don't want no more stinking services, okay? What we want you to do is actually be in stock when I order something. And there was really a shout in the wilderness that, hey, you don't have enough inventory. I buy something, you don't have it, that kills me as a customer. And so to me, that's kind of a major condemnation of reducing inventory to drive cash. We've cut inventory enough so we can kill the company. And I think the same concept applies to accounts receivable. My good friend Walking Bear Sanchez, who I know MDM has used on some webinars, has argued for a long time that the goal of accounts receivable management isn't to lower accounts receivable. Okay? That's what we've been doing. The goal is to say, let's have enough accounts receivable to drive more sales. And so while I think inventory and accounts receivable are important, I think lowering it is just as bad as raising it. I think we could have too little as opposed to too much. Now, my final concept before I get off the soapbox, I'll stop preaching here, I promise. The way to have more cash is to make a gigantic profit. Kind of funny how that works here. The most successful firms do have more cash than the unsuccessful ones. I'll admit that. Our research shows that every single line of trade. However, they didn't get there by cutting the inventory and cutting the accounts receivable. They got there by becoming a profit leader. And that's the end of my soapbox rant, and I apologize.
All right, kind of going back to your key profit drivers then, doesn't everyone understand how they are important to the business?
Actually, what I found interesting through the years is most managers don't fully understand them. And part of the process is finance is a complicated issue. Sure. Another part of the issue is finance is a little bit dull. Actually, it's really dull, okay? And most managers of most distribution businesses still have a sales and marketing background. And as a result, they're a little bit hesitant about the finance area. Not that they're weak necessarily, but it's not what's fun and enjoyable. And they tend to place weight on things that they enjoy doing more and a little bit less on things that they don't enjoy. For example, every manager I know places a lot of emphasis on sales growth. Now, sales growth is important, no doubt about that. But sales growth is also fun, and it's exciting, and it's doing what you really ought to do, make the company bigger. And so we end up giving sales growth a little bit more benefit than it deserves. And I'll give an example here. It's really an important example, and it's one that managers don't fully appreciate. As this example, a 5% reduction in total expenses produces a larger profit than a 5% increase in sales. And that's an interesting, kind of conundrum. Expenses is actually more impactful than sales. But we like sales, and we hate expense cutting. And the problem is expense cutting has incredibly bad public relations, terrible public relations. Expense cutting is viewed as better than the Ebola virus, but not as good as the post office, kind of somewhere in that. I hate it. And so we avoid expense control. And the reality is we may not like it. It may not be fun, but it has a big impact. Now, human beings are human beings. I can't change that and wouldn't want to change that. They like to work in things that are fun and interesting. How sometimes what's fun and interesting doesn't really line up with profit. And so a lot of managers don't understand necessarily, but also have less interest in doing some things. So there's a little confusion about how those profit drivers really work.